Call the meeting to order. Roll call. Eugene Thurston, Rebecca Hanson, Mr. Bolton, Mr. Buckley, Brian Murphy, myself. Are there any public comments unrelated to the agenda? Thank you.
Copies of the agenda?
We don't have an agenda
We
today.
don't have any. Do you normally get one for work sessions?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So there's only two things on the agenda, you and Brian's checklist. So.
I just have to hand it in with my expense sheet to get mileage, is why I asked for it.
Ooh.
It's not
I can write
that I
you a
don't want
note.
it or.
You need an agenda. Okay. So take care of that. Seeing no comments, we'll get started. Terry, you can come on up and see what's what.
So I handed out two things, the working draft of the recommendations, that's kind of the plan, and also copies of the natural resources inventory that I had learned at the last meeting that you had one from a long time ago, and Sharon loaned me the CD, so I made some copies and I made some extras so they can go to members not here, and I don't know if there are Conservation Commission members that don't have it or whatnot. So I'm gonna give that pile to you, Brian,
Okay.
and extra copies of what we're going over tonight
Okay.
for members who weren't here. So, Brian, we've been going through the recommendations topic by topic, working with information from the community survey and the roundtable discussions, and other sources. And so we've developed recommendations for economic development, land use, facilities, did a lot of work on transportation. So we're down to a couple of kind of general community character type sections and housing to go through. I just was looking for my notes on what's new so I can fill you in on that while you have it. You know, what I did between meetings. So the places where there are only two columns, that's the text still in there from the old plan.
Okay.
And the sections with three columns are the new that we're working on. The formatting has been evolving, so it's a little different section to section. Obviously, I'll clean that up so it all is parts of a whole. So what's new between meetings? I did the edits on. Wait a minute. Where is that? I've lost a piece. I didn't move that. So I did the responsibility and timeline for economic development and land use, arts and culture that came out of the last meeting, the edits on facilities from the last meeting, on the last page on 52. Is it 52 in yours as well?
Yes.
I added this. I know that you went through the transportation a couple of times with our transportation staff, but I added this about the connectivity between the transportation plans and the schools because that came up when we talked about facilities. I just want to take a quick look through. So my thought is that we should go through housing tonight. And also kind of think about that first section of what you want to say about community. One of my moves here didn't, for some reason didn't take. What I wanted to do was put Is there any way to make copies of one page?
Yes. 25 cents a sheet.
No, I think we're all set. I think I have.
Scared her off with the price. I know.
I think I just.
All right, 12 and a half.
No, I think I just didn't make myself the right version. I'll just take one of yours. So, so the other thing I did was edit the PSU relationship stuff, and I moved it up to the front. You see it on page 24. And so in my mind, there's community, economic development, land use, housing, the historic natural cultural heritage, and then facilities. And those what I have right now as the big headings of how the recommendations are organized. And my thought is to somehow blend the stuff on these first 3 pages into this community. If we could work on that and then go through the old housing recommendations that are still in here. And then I'll make those changes and send it to Brian to send out. And then for the next meeting, it's really important that everybody just read the thing all the way through, pay attention to the responsibility. Are there other parties to add to that middle column? Does the time frame make sense? What's missing? What, now that we've gone through it topic by topic, did something fall out that should have stayed in, or give it that final look. And I'll be putting together some background narrative for land use and economic development. And that will complete the our contract. That will to get from there to a public hearing and a formatted document and all. But those were the pieces that we have under contract.
At present.
Right.
Okay.
It's basically to update the action plan, focusing on land use and economic development. And when the plan was done last time, there was a whole notebook of the background material, but that wasn't covered in the RFP. It's not covered in this project. I think there was some hope of the town engaging students maybe, but so we can talk more about that if it's important. But I think this gives a good direction, certainly information to support all our recommendations. Okay. And you're gonna not move until it's adopted, right?
It depends on the rest of the team. They can be pretty uncooperative.
Yeah.
We might have to become more uncooperative if that's the case.
So, the first page, this community profile goal, I don't tend to put recommendations or recommend that you have recommendations about growth rates. You don't really control that much. Plymouth is one of the only areas in our region who's really seen much growth. And I think that focus has been on what kind of growth and where and what resources you want to protect. As I haven't really heard even a conversation I don't remember at the visioning session from anybody about we're growing too fast, we're growing too slow. It's not really on people's radar. So, so I maybe would steer this towards some more general community character kind of statements, or not have it at all, because you have that in the visioning section. Any thoughts on these first 3 recommendations on the first page?
I think 2 and 3 are kind of saying the same thing. And they're all around this anticipated population growth rate. And so if you don't recommend putting in an anticipated growth rate, then I think 2 and 3 become unimportant.
And this is from this page is from the original master,
Yeah.
or the last master
Right.
plan.
Yeah, it's just been kind of hanging out there to
You know
me
what's,
ignoring it.
so in the last master plan that was 10 years ago? Is that what it was?
Ish, yeah.
2007, 2008.
So at some point in the last, and it seems like it was less than that, Plymouth State made public their projection of increasing their student population to, they had, 6,000 students, or they had some end goal in mind. Right? Is anyone familiar with that? At one point, all of a sudden, they were going to double in size.
Yes.
Yeah, we
right?
have their current numbers. I don't remember them off the top of my head. Bit of their master plan that they just recently did.
Yeah. So, and that would be the only reason I could see a concern for population, because if Plymouth State doubles in size, I mean, that definitely could overwhelm the town part of.
So maybe that brings you to this updated section about working with PSU that I have a couple typos in, I'm sorry, but this is a working draft. Pages 24 and 25, they were in the education section in the last plan, and it just didn't go in there. It wasn't about education, it was about the marriage between the community and the university. So I made it its own thing and moved it kind of up front because it came up first at like every roundtable discussion and the visioning session. It's the primary thing on people's minds. So I thought, let's just put it first, get it on the table.
And certainly that 1% growth rate could have been encompassed by the university's increasing of the student body. Because I know that the current administration is charged with raising it. I don't know what the projected numbers are.
2000 to 2010, you grew, I mean, this area, Plymouth, Campton, Thornton, grew more than the rest of our region. It wasn't just the student population,
Right.
but just growth in general. And I'll put some of that in, even though we're not technically doing all the background, I'll be putting some of that in the narrative.
What was the growth rate from 2000 to 2010?
Is that 0.14%?
No,
1990 to 2000?
for the decade, it was, I want to say like between 10 and 15%,
10 and 15%?
not per year, for the decade.
Okay, so it was more than 1%.
I think it was.
Yeah, if it's 0.14 annually,
That was a different decade too, but
yeah.
I guess my opinion on the old section is that we could do without it.
I agree.
so then help me with a name for this thing that's now going to be the first section that's on pages 24 and 25. I mean, in planning, we call it town gown.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's what it used to be called, was town gown
it's what
relations.
it's called in planning, but is it,
Yeah, I don't
is it,
like
a- I don't think it's
correct.
it's probably not appropriate to actually call it that in the plan. Maybe we just call it Plymouth State University.
Or town, Plymouth State partner, not partnership, but collaboration or something.
Town university relations, town university interaction or something, because that really is,
I had relations that deleted it.
well, I mean, and not necessarily that, but, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that that interaction between, and the impact of having that university in town as, there's certainly benefits of it, but,
Maybe partnership is the right word. Did you say partnership?
Partnership or collaboration.
Maybe partnership, if this is the goal, is that it's more of a partnership, right? Maybe
I would
that's,
agree with that, yeah.
how's that? Maybe that's the right word for the,
I like collaboration better than partnership, just because I think you can collaborate without getting someone else to sign off on it right away, but partnership implies that they've agreed on this.
they're here.
Yes.
and it also puts a positive spin on something that sometimes isn't positive, that, that there is a collaboration, that hopefully we're working together.
I'd vote for partnership.
Actually, partnerships don't have to be nice. So,
I mean, I can live with partnership.
Try it out for the draft anyway. You're gonna see it a couple more times,
Yeah.
so.
Maybe we'll all agree on collaboration next time.
maybe not.
Fortunately, I'm not still using a typewriter.
So you won't see the cross off going back and forth.
Right. Well, in my copy I do, because I do it all with track changes. So you haven't seen the revised wording yet on this, so take a look at that now. And as well as the other columns.
Odor.
Yeah, I was kind of
Yeah.
laughing over that too.
Yeah, that's, I don't know that I changed that, that was in here. The university is certainly listed as a player in a lot of recommendations throughout other sections of the plan.
Number 4, work together. Is that specific? I mean, this must appear somewhere else too, in a more general sense, work together to promote safe walking and cycling routes. This is just specifically to routes that would involve the college or the university and the town.
Yeah, there was quite a bit of conversation about it, both at the roundtable we had, focused on the university, and also at a meeting where we were here and the university was here about a new dorm. And I put us in there because it's something that we had actually offered to try to help the town and university work together to look at some of those issues. It's kind of, I mean, in my mind, kind of a low-hanging fruit thing as far as being able to work together. A good goal that could lead to more collaboration.
And you could certainly qualify it by saying in the village area, which would set it apart from the, because I'm sure this appears in the transportation aspect too, correct?
Should be. I was looking to see if it was in that weird kind of education section in the last one. Yeah, it was in the last plan. Only it was worded encourage the town university, and that's not really right. And it listed the elementary school as one of the responsible parties, and I took that out to make this just be about the university, just about the university students. And put the more general one about schools in general at the end of transportation. On page 52. So yeah, the concept is in there a couple times. Maybe it should say for university faculty, staff, and students.
That makes me think in the top section that it does specify collaboration between the town government and Plymouth State administrators. Is that too top down, or should it be between the town and the university? Or is it because it's who's guiding that we need to specify who within each organization?
Yeah, I didn't bold a lead in that. I wasn't really sure who. When you review the action plan once a year, who you should be pointing to for getting that going and taking the first step. I mean, that's really the bold ones.
I think that would be from the state and then the planning board.
And not to put anybody on the spot, but town administration, of course, includes your planner. So, not trying to specify a town staff person, but.
Well, I mean, it's actually pretty
It's-
broad, because it would include highway and the PD too.
Right,
Just
or the town,
they can
or
identify
Paul,
problems,
but,
yeah.
And it depends kind of how, that relationship is gonna work at the town level of, is Brian gonna be the one that says, all right, here's what you guys need to have on your workshop meeting next month, or is the board gonna drive that? So maybe we bold, both of those and PSU. So do you wanna say, how do you wanna describe that geographic area?
I was thinking the village area, but we're discounting collaboration with them to like develop biking trails in conservation properties. That's
No,
somewhere else.
you can go ahead and list them as a partner on those recommendations later on, but this one's just about the
Alright.
relationship. And,
Yeah, well, the biggest footprint is here in the downtown, so I think if we started there.
and we kind of go back and forth whether we're calling that the downtown or the village area.
I think the village area gets confused with the zoning.
I've been calling it the downtown.
Yeah, I think the downtown area is better. The village is confused with the zoning district.
With us, is it every community is different. Is it the downtown with a small d or a big D?
Big D.
Yeah, this is
Big D. It's an ego thing.
Hey.
And often when people speak of the village, they're talking about the homes up on, between Langdon and Winter and bounded by Langdon and Warren,
Okay.
because I like the original settlement of Plymouth, as far as the town.
We good to leave that for now, or?
And Tara, I've come late to this, I missed the beginning of the master plan meetings, but, is this the entire master plan, or is there like 22 other pages before this?
It's not the entire plan.
Okay.
I'll be writing up this. Board has reviewed the section on the visiting and the survey results. And I'm gonna add some narrative on, and seeing land use maps and development limitations and all that, so all that will be incorporated in. So the other thing that's still hanging out there from the old plan is housing on pages 34 to 37. And what I think would be helpful and fit in a meeting, would be to talk about them in conceptual terms, not worry about the wording. And when I leave and do the editing, I may reorganize it too. And there's a couple in land use that I highlighted as maybe really they belong in housing, so. So you just go through them and you tell me, for each statement, the goals and recommendations, that makes sense, is it done or no? And we should also talk about the responsibility and time frame so that we're a step ahead on that. So starting with goal number 1 on page 34. We get to that rate of housing again, like, I don't know what the town can really do about that.
And to my mind, the important part of that goal is just ensuring affordable housing. And that very often is a function of growth, but I think that is.
Yeah, a more common way to word kind of a general housing goal would be to ensure safe and affordable housing for residents of all ages, something like that. So if we're gonna go with the pattern of kind of having one general goal and then these strategies underneath, it might be something more like that.
It's so market dependent, though, other than the workforce housing stuff that has been coming through, which has brought a lot of building to the town of Plymouth, it's still, single-family homes are probably the number one, and they're, the homeowners will either build them or, there's a lot of buying of existing stock. I know that the realtors say that the market's heating up right now because of the lack of affordable stock. And that's been the push in recent years, has been affordability, workforce housing or whatever,
Hey, Brian, what would you say on the average number of new single-family, multifamily building permits per year in Plymouth?
For new starts, 10's a good number. It covers all of them. That covers mobile homes, stick-built, and multifamily
So
housing.
10 per year,
Yeah.
out of a housing stock of 2,000 units?
I don't even know how many homes we have in the town. I don't
It
think
seems,
anybody's ever derived that number.
yeah, I guess it seems like a really low number to me.
Yeah,
10
but,
per
but
year.
that's what I mean. Since I've been here, and I'm not taking the blame for this, but, you know, the economy has gone down, which really affects new housing starts, especially new single-family homes. You know, and then it gets offset sometimes when you have these larger projects like Plymouth Woods that came in. So, yeah, I mean, as an average, I think 10 a year would be good. That speaks to booms as well as the bus cycle. So I think, you know, this entire, all 3 points can be probably go down to what Chris was saying about, you know, affordable housing. Because that seems to be the big push these days.
Well, that's a different topic.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, that's not what,
But I don't know what the town could do to spur it, to be honest with you. I mean, other than being who we are, which is the attractive point. But as far as, you know, town administration really has no, other than not throwing up roadblocks to people. That's about the only thing that we can do is, you know, to move the process along.
well, I mean, all of the pieces of the plan hang together, and there's a land use recommendation to expand the single-family residence district. So that's a way that the town could encourage more housing development.
But that's all built out. See, that's an overlay over existing built-out areas of the town. There are very few properties in town that are available to be built on.
And so that's why there's a recommendation in the land use section to expand that zoning district to take in some more developable land.
But we have, yeah, but it's way out there. I mean, we're talking, if you think of it as concentric rings, the bullseye is the, you know, the downtown, and it's built out until you get to the, more into the agricultural zone.
Right.
So, you know,
I think that was the recommendation we were talking about, was expanding single-family residential into the agricultural zone.
And getting rid of the agricultural zone altogether.
Correct. So that was the rationale.
okay.
I guess I would kind of go where Chris is going, you know, if, focus on affordable housing. The accessory dwelling unit was a big step in that direction, something we've already done. You know, this first goal, number 1, I don't think any of those 3 are really applicable.
So, I mean, I think what I'm hearing, there's agreement to take the rate out of that goal and focus on housing development that ensures safe and affordable housing for our residents.
Yeah.
Right? The rate, the concept of the rate goes. In terms of knowing how many houses are in town, what OEP, the OEP estimates are based on the, would be the 2010 census count, the actual count, not the American Community Survey, and then they contact you for the building permit numbers, and
yearly.
and that's the best guess anybody would have on that, other than the assessor's data. You could harvest it from
Right.
that too, because there'd be a code in there. But the OAP numbers are close enough for anybody's planning.
Yeah, I guess if we're trying to identify a rate and then trying to match a housing development rate, I just
Yeah,
don't know
how
how
do you
we
do that?
possibly do that.
You know, I think some of this language that I see in some of these older plans is kind of thinking about the need for growth management still, you know, with the building boom of the 70s and 80s, and oh my goodness, how do we stop it? And we talk, you know, that's whereas most of our communities are looking for us to help them grow. So,
Yeah, that's how I read those, that whole section.
So let's try to pull it apart. Is number one important? I mean, that's 2 minutes to get it from the OEP report, right? And it's probably important to keep answering the OEP survey every year. So,
I
so
think,
that's probably okay.
but beyond housing, I think it's important for us to be monitoring that on a regular basis.
Track the rate of development, period.
Yeah.
Because one will impact the other for sure.
And just understand the population in town and migration, things like that.
So once a year, we should get a
That's tougher.
one-pager from Brian.
Yeah, but that's tougher. I mean, OEP knows about building permits, but they don't know about people.
Yeah, you can get that from there's another state agency,
Well,
it's rough, but I guess,
yeah.
I guess
it is
maybe I
rough.
picked the wrong statistic, but not looking to make this difficult, but more just what information is easy for us to get that we're not gonna go looking for ourselves that would help us do our job.
Yeah. And it might not go in this section, but, I'll get that thought in here.
Can I just,
Collect it and look at it and think about it. It is important to be aware of in your jobs, sorry.
and this may be like taking us way off topic, but this is kind of where, what I'm thinking, is it a town's responsibility to make sure there's affordable housing for the lowest earners amongst us? And I guess what I'm thinking is, when, one of our goals is for economic development. If the economy's good, housing prices go up, right? And it's kind of, almost a form of gentrification where, if Plymouth is doing really well, all of a sudden housing becomes difficult for people that maybe have lived here for a long time versus, like, you look at it, I was just in Berlin not too long ago, and you want to buy a cheap house, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of housing available up there. So is there some mechanism that a town can use to make sure that people aren't priced out of their homes? Does that make sense? Because it happens all the time, not so much in New Hampshire, but certainly like oceanfront property gets gentrified.
Yeah, well, you do that by, you can provide incentives for affordable units. You can make sure that things aren't zoned for larger than they need to be. Certainly, making sure that you have opportunities for residential use in the downtown, is part of that.
I think also,
And the accessory dwelling units, that's a huge source of affordable housing in our community.
but also remembering housing is also just kind of in line with the accessory dwelling units. Housing isn't all single-family residential either, so, and often affordable housing is multifamily or apartment
One of
building.
the things that people are running into is multi-unit housing is pretty well precluded by zoning from the downtown area. And the only available place to do it, and if you look at the tables of uses in the zoning ordinances, they were trying to encourage it in the fringe areas. So, but it goes against what everybody wants, which is walkability. So, we don't have vacant land downtown to put up, or encourage multifamily use. But because everybody wants to locate here, because it's easier to get around, it's walkable in the neighborhoods. And if you put those out, other than for elderly, or the like Plymouth Woods, where it's subsidized to a certain degree, that's what makes those areas attractive. But for mom and dad, young families or single people, they want to kind of be closer to where the action is for the most part. I mean, everybody wants to not see anybody, but there again, you're living out in the middle of nowhere. So, it's kind of a balance or a trade-off as to, what you as the housing consumer want. And lately it's been location as close as possible to places of work, which happens to be the university.
One solution is encouraging residential over commercial,
Mm-hmm.
and there are towns in New Hampshire that have done that.
Yeah.
Durham, for example.
Mixed use is ignored in the town of Plymouth, other
So,
than in the village
You know,
commercial.
there you can give developers incentives to have a mix of affordability in residential units over commercial. Either give them incentives in terms of footprint or parking or build out or whatever it might be.
Is that in this master plan somewhere, encouraging
I
mixed use?
don't think so.
No, I don't think it's ever appeared in there. I mean, that's a fairly recent thrust.
We mentioned
I've
it-
been here.
It was mentioned at a couple of the focus groups, and there was a lot of resistance to it from some people because they thought it was going to change the character of the town to add another story to a building or whatever.
I think there was a problem with like zoning too.
It's in the economic development, if you look on page 28. 4D.
Just the downtown.
Yeah, that section is about the downtown.
Downtown with a capital D.
Okay, so getting back to goals beyond affordable housing for people of all ages. Do you have any more overriding goals than that? No.
What are we, when we talk about affordable housing, exactly what are we talking about?
If you're working at McDonald's, you can afford to rent an apartment in Plymouth.
So we're not, well, I mean, for me, affordable housing also means a normal family can afford a house. Like,
Right.
you know, I mean, my wife and I are looking for a house in Plymouth, and we can't find a place that fits our needs that is in our budget.
Right, and that's another good definition of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I'm just curious what the range is for affordable.
Well, that would, I think
And
that
so
would be.
and so the last plan dealt with that in housing goal number 4 that you see on page 37.
What would be a mechanism for that to permanent affordability?
The
Would that be like,
workforce housing law has some criteria for that. I like the concept that somebody was thinking about livable wage jobs in number 2, but it really doesn't go in housing under goal number 4. I think if we just kind of go through the statements in the old plan, we'll figure out where we want to go that way. So I got, in general, I mean, the concept of the goal is right, except talking about the rate. First one, make it more general, and maybe it goes somewhere else in the plan about just kind of keeping tabs on the demographics. And then, number two probably leaves, because you can't really control the rate, right? Number three, do you have your own building code? or
Yeah,
you-
this,
Separate from the state?
no.
You-
We
you would-
adopted the enforcement of the building code, so that,
Yeah, okay.
it
So,
pretty much sets us for that, so
so it's
that,
gonna say something more like continue to enforce the state building code. Right,
yeah.
that would be the way to update that. Not sure you need housing goal number two. We really dealt with that, I think, in the land use section, and we talked just a lot of focus on zoning changes in the land use section. But this can give us kind of a check on it. I think we covered number one in the land use section. Number two. We kind of, we talk in the land use section about going through the zoning and making sure that each zoning district describes what it really wants to be, the character, and then go through those permitted and special exception uses to make sure that's supporting what that part of town should be. Like, big picture, it's all about keeping the distinct areas of town with their own character, right? That's the direction that everybody wants, not have it all zoned to eventually look all the same, which it kind of is now, because like almost everything is allowed almost everywhere, in a way. So I don't know if you want this, something like this specific, or is that, did that cover it, where you talked about it in the land use of saying to make sure that each zoning district is described in what you're trying to achieve, and then you review the list? But do you want to go further on the topic of the single-family zone or not?
I want to know what higher quality housing is. Does that mean?
From what I've heard at the different public meetings, it's housing without students, and I don't know how you can control that, so.
Right.
We've talked about enforcing the limits on occupancy and that, and land use, so. I didn't really hear concerns otherwise anywhere about the specifics of the single-family zone, other than that.
Well, it's a matter of interpretation. You know, the young family thinks of single-family zones as populated by people very much like themselves. Constitutionally, single-family zone means that it is single-family homes in that zone. And what constitutes a family is further broken down in the zoning ordinance. For example, we can't say this is a no-student zone. Good luck. You just can't do it. And you can spend all the money in the town trying to fight that in court, and you will lose. So other than gated communities, I don't know if that's a really way to go with this for number two. I mean, there's not, I don't think that the town has the power to do something like that, to be honest with you. We can encourage it.
So what is a gated community then? Over 50, or, I mean.
Well, it's whatever population you set it up for.
Right, it's like a PUD, or
Yeah,
just a
but
private
it's-
development.
Yeah, essentially, it's a private
You
road.
couldn't identify like a couple blocks in town saying,
No, mm-mm.
yeah, okay.
No, because it's created to be that way. It's not forced to be that way. Because all it takes is one holdout in that community and you can't do it.
I guess regarding the housing goal number 2 sections, I think the first 4 are probably covered with the exception of number 4, which didn't fly in town. I think they're covered under the land use of the section, revising the zoning. I think 5, 6, and 7 are things that we probably do want to include.
And there is movement afoot for a rental housing ordinance currently.
I
So
thought,
there is.
Yes.
I thought you guys told me that you did have one.
It was being worked on the last time. Well, before the last master plan, it went down in flames. I don't think it ever came out of committee. There was an ordinance amendment last year that failed because it was a tie vote. There was no majority. So we're looking at it again.
Because what the conversation was about people registering rentals?
Yes.
So right now you don't have that requirement.
No, not for anything less than 3. That's a state law.
Do you have something for more than,
Oh, 3 is the minimum. So anything up from there is there's certain things, there has to be, on-call manager and that kind of stuff. But it doesn't go down. If you had 2 homes on the same, then you wouldn't have to do that. But it's 3 is where it kicks in.
I'm not following you, so,
Well, it's not a rental housing ordinance, it's a registration, basically. And what that entails is that you identify somebody who will pick up the phone when you call. And it's specifically targeting, not owner occupants, but anybody else, any, out-of-town landlord or out of that house landlord.
so what is it that didn't pass in town?
It was, the last time it was the inspection, mandated inspection of all rental properties that would be put out to rent at least 30 calendar days a year, I think. It was very open-ended.
A lot of communities are starting to run into problems with, like Airbnb.
That's a whole different worm
Yeah.
can.
Right. But the same kind of idea,
Yes,
renting something that may not be safe.
Yes.
There's no way to kind of capture that. So do you want this in here, or do you want to try again?
I think
That's what I was trying to
the
get
rental
at, is what
housing
do you
ordinance
have
should
and what
stay.
what do you have and what do you want to have?
I think it should stay. I mean, I think,
Yeah,
especially since it was a 50-50 split.
right.
Okay.
And we are starting to work on it again.
Okay. So what about 1, 2, and 3? Are they going to stay or go away?
Five isn't legal. 5 has to go. Sorry, but you can't have 5.
And the same would be with 2, I would say.
Yeah, I thought you said to cross out 1, 2, and 3 already.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So we kept 4, we crossed out 5. Six doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
No.
I mean, you deal with it in transportation, you deal with it in walkability, site plan review.
Yeah.
What is this really trying to get at? I'm not
Hmm.
sure.
What is an access permit?
Yeah, access permit.
Yeah, did it mean driveway permit? And how does that have anything to do with walkways in traditional residential
Mhm.
neighborhoods? I don't.
It almost seems like it's sort of circling around like curb cuts in neighborhoods or something like that.
Yeah, then that would be the driveway permits,
Mhm.
but Is there an issue there? Is something going on that, or was something going on that?
That's what it sounds like.
Mhm.
Like maybe someone's kid was prohibited on walking through someone's yard to school. They've done for decades and suddenly they can't do it.
And the only control we have on driveways is at the connection at the town road at this point.
Right, and that would cover going through a sidewalk
Mm-hmm.
already, but maybe just get rid of that. It doesn't really have anything to do with housing either. Seven is good, but how would you do that?
Yeah, I know,
What,
but it's
what
good.
kind of what kind of incentive is there?
5-year tax break.
I mean, the best incentive is you already have it. You have a pretty full village area, village zone in the zoning, right? You,
Yeah, I mean, there's still structures out. Well, theoretically, the energy co-op was gonna be moving, and that would be like a large vacant property and a couple of buildings out on Tenny Mountain Highway that,
your zones are pretty developed already, right? I mean, except for the ag. So that really, you're already providing the incentive to redevelop sites. You
I
don't-
think the
you don't
only
have-
incentive that we could do would be to foster amendments in the zoning to make it easier to obtain those, under certain conditions.
But less of a specific housing thing and more almost commercial development, I think.
And so, in the economic development section, under maintain the viability of the downtown, I wrote, ensure that land use regulations encourage downtown revitalization and redevelopment of existing structures and space, so. We covered that.
Because I can't really speak towards sort of the renovation of homes, but I can definitely see vacancy in Tenny Mountain Highway. We build new buildings for businesses that existed in other places across the street, so.
So should we make sure that we have that somewhere in Tenny Mountain Highway section too, then? I can check for that.
I mean, number 7 only makes sense if you're going to include residential. It's gonna be residential.
As far as the
Right.
mixed use idea.
Yeah, okay. And general,
Tara, before we move on, I just want to be clear, on number 2 that we crossed out, which had something to do with creating a no student zone, I can guarantee you that a lot of the townspeople that aren't on the planning board or just live here are concerned about the encroachment.
oh, we know, we spent a whole roundtable hearing about.
Right,
Yeah.
so there's no, and that really, what that is a function of is the college growing. When they expand, those students have to go somewhere. Are we totally helpless? Like the college can do whatever they want? And
No, you can make sure you're enforcing your occupancy requirements.
I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, but that doesn't prevent a homeowner from renting their house
Exactly.
to students.
But it limits the number of
Yes.
students that can be in that house.
Right. But I mean, if you add an accessory dwelling unit on your house, you can fit, 6, 8 students or whatever and rent
We
it out.
will be protected by setbacks in a lot of those areas just for the size.
Plus, it requires owner occupancy.
Um,
So that's gonna, yes, I mean, certainly I could, I'm alone in a 5-room house. So I could make my small apartment and rent it out to 3. So that kind of does do with the co-location and the renovation of existing areas. But, and we don't say which unit you have to live in, the bigger one or the smaller one. So it would allow somebody like me, if I so wish, to go down that road, and have my small apartment and, pay my taxes with the rent. And, So it'll help the people who are, in the building already. They're the owner occupant. But it keeps the folks from buying, a 3-bedroom house and hoping to get 2 more people in it by putting on a ADU. Because you have to live there, and we brought that in just to protect ourselves just from that, because I can imagine that anything up in the village that is a single-family home now, if they were totally to rent with an out-of-town landlord, add another unit, hell yes. It's 2 more students at whatever they charge per semester.
$3,500.
Yeah. I mean, that's a serious chunk of change for 750 square feet.
Yeah, it seems like that one, which one am I looking at, number 2? It almost seems like it's trying to protect the single-family zone and keep it from becoming multifamily. That's kind of what it seems like to me. So it's trying to keep people from selling, because didn't that happen on Merrill Street? Wasn't there a redistricting somewhere where it expanded the multifamily zone at some point in the past?
If it did, it was quite a while ago.
I think,
It
yeah.
wasn't recent.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you got to look at it from the point of view of content neutral and just look at the bodies. So
Oh.
single-family home equals 3 people. We don't care what your affiliation is, The only break that we give is to the actual families where we don't count the kids that are involved. So,
That's a good thing.
yeah.
I'll look at that
4
with,
kids and so.
maybe in the land use section with the other zoning recommendations, that it, maybe not be duplexes either, right?
Well, and.
Not just,
and-
are you saying not, I mean, is the consensus kind of to make sure the single-family zone doesn't allow duplexes or multifamily?
Right, but that's a function of the zoning board. There's relief for anything.
No, that's the purpose of the master plan.
Right, right.
Make land use recommendations about changing the zoning, that then the zoning board has to interpret and enforce.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that it's already an illegal use requiring a variance to do it. Because there's always relief, so you gotta have the variance.
You want to have recommendations in the master plan that are supporting things that are in place that are important to people and
Yes.
addressing issues you've heard about. So if there's strong feelings to keep it that way, then this is the place to say that and support that.
But I can't envision a mechanism that we could use to keep it that way, is what I'm saying. I mean, yes, it's a lofty goal, and I appreciate what the people are saying, but we can't do it. It's unconstitutional to grind that fine. And,
No, I'm sorry, you may not be following something. We're
Okay.
talking about reviewing the zoning ordinance, reviewing what's allowed by special exception. And this would be a recommendation to say not to allow duplexes or multifamily.
Yeah, and they're already.
homes in that
and there's
district.
other metrics that weigh in as far as, area of the lot and all
Right.
that other stuff.
And that gives, neighbors some teeth if the zoning board was leaning toward granting an illegal variance, which some do.
Yeah, but
So I have a question, Brian. So they are allowed by special exception?
no, by variance. In other words, they're not allowed.
They're not allowed,
They're
right?
not allowed. But you can appeal anything under the variance
This,
To who?
to the zoning board.
it would be illegal for them to grant it, but this would be saying that, that the planning board won't be recommending a change in that zoning district to allow duplexes or multifamily.
I don't know what more we could do to stop it at this point, because the protections that we have already are current state of the art.
Well, one thing, Brian, is that if it's in the master plan, that the zoning board can go back and say, look, there's our justification for not granting you this variance. So it gives them the base of what they need to make their decision, so that's why it should be in the
Yes,
master
helpful.
plan. Right?
I just can't imagine a situation where that would be illegal, would be legal to grant such a variance.
Okay,
Variance is granted if they can't make use of their property at all.
Mm-hmm.
Going from a single-family residence to a duplex I can't imagine how that could.
Right, the hardship is gonna get them right off the bat, my point is that there is a mechanism available, should people avail themselves of it, whether they win or lose is a different deal. And yes, I mean, there's plenty of backstory to any of these currently. Now, here, the scenario that everyone fears, I think, is that last large lot in the single-family zone that the kids all played in. Suddenly somebody comes forward for a multifamily use under whatever, workforce housing, they have it mapped out. I don't know that, other than the ZBA, that would be where they would make or break the case.
But now, legally, they have to vote on each
Each of the criteria.
item, and I think you already had yours doing that,
Yes.
right? So, and that makes it tougher.
So to get back to Chris's point, which is kind of where we started this discussion about whether we keep number 2 in there or not. We probably should, because it is important to a lot of people, but maybe we can change it so that,
I did,
yes.
Yeah, something like, maintain the protected single-family zone within the downtown.
By
area.
enforcing occupancy rates or something to give people,
I put it in the land use with the other zoning statements.
all right, so where are we now?
Housing goal 3. So we have this first one in that collaboration goal. So there's some committee, right? I learned about that there's some
Yeah, that's the same thing. There's CCC.
some committee with a
PSU meets with town and, yeah, it's not the planning board. And actually, we met with the PSU master plan people, once or twice.
yeah. But so what's that committee?
CCC, it's the.
Campus
Co-
Community Council or something
Yeah.
like that.
Campus Community Council.
And
The meeting's called by PSU, by, that's the commissioner's office, or, the president's office. And it consists of, the housing people, the chief of PSU police, the chief of our police, town administrator, selectmen, and several others from PSU in addition to town. And sometimes, the residence owners show up, and sometimes at least the only 2 town people that are regulars that I knew of were the inn.
Frank and Jane Hinkle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's sometimes, it's frequently canceled.
they seem to be the player to assign a couple of these to, right?
It might revitalize it because it kind of like flounders.
Mhm.
Give them a purpose.
We also had a regular PSU staff person that was coming to our meetings for,
Well, that's another thing too. Yeah, we used to have, well, Tim
Outreach.
Keefe. This is like historic. Tim Keefe used to, Dean of Students used to, at the time, used to show up for every meeting, and I think he also showed up for every select board meeting too. And it's kind of like refreshing to have a university administrator, that's sitting in the audience to. So, we brought that to the president's attention, that we were no longer having that once Tim left. And then we had Jim Hunreiser come for a period of time, and then he left. And then it just got carried on with Mike, yeah, whatever his name is, crap. Mark and,
Oh, I can't think of his name. Fischler.
Fischler, yeah. And actually, he's been pretty good about showing up. But that's basically there to monitor, to contribute when, if we come up with an issue that, it would be kind of handy to have them here to address. It's, I think there should be a different, person that would be meeting with, because in the past, Steve Taxar was the master plan developer, the facilities. I mean, he knew where the university was going as far as buildings and stuff. Mike Fischler would not necessarily, could bring that message back, but it would be very helpful to meet with somebody that was more in tune with their planning. So anyway, it's a long story. I think that we should probably encourage that. And I don't think the CCC is like the venue. But you could throw them in.
But they might be for a couple of these things.
Yeah, yeah.
Do the, on number 8, have the property managers and landlords provided data to the town?
Mhm. All the organized landlords are a phone call away from me. And they've been, actually, those guys are the least of our problems. They will not let anything interfere with money rolling into their pockets. Including the behavior of the students. So.
And they hire people to basically drive around and patrol all night.
Yeah. Did a great job.
Until it quickly isn't.
Number 6 is that rate of growth thing again. That just doesn't even fit there.
Although, would that have something to, is that campus construction or just,
But you don't even have control over that.
That's it. They can monitor it.
I mean, that's the whole conversation that took place here about the dorm and the foot traffic
Yeah.
and parking and.
And
providing
the-
fire
The
protection? and-
seven stories and,
Right.
Yeah.
So do you wanna, go through these and update and fill in the responsibility?
nah. No, I'm only kidding.
It's a lot easier to just cross them out, but I think some of these are important issues.
Yeah.
But some of the things in here will be subsumed under the rental housing ordinance that we're working on, hopefully.
And this will support that.
Yes.
You want, anything that you have in mind to do in the next 10 years, you wanna make sure it's in the plans.
And I think it's especially important considering the fate of the last time, the
Yes.
last one that went through, so.
Well, that was awful close, you
Yeah.
know, and I think the only reason it failed is because they didn't fill in the details, to be honest with you. Because the scuttlebutt was it was gonna cost, $150, $200 per inspection, which is, onerous. And, the landlords actually asked their students to come out and vote. So, and it was kind of a bad deal, and it was a good thing that they did, because, even though I was the first one to sign that petition, I saw that I didn't have very high hopes for it because there were too many questions unanswered. When I brought the building code to the planning board, they were more concerned with how I was going to deal with it than anything else. You know, how much is this going to cost, and what's going to stop you from throwing people out on the street? I mean, just really strange questions. But generally, that's what they're looking at.
So I was hearing from students that were worried about the people dressed in black and jackbooted, thugs that came in at midnight to find out what they're smoking, or, so that they were, quite concerned about.
Yes, it's always the camel's nose in the tent when we're dealing with student population, because, and obviously, we don't really care about that aspect of it. We're focused more on something else.
So we won't write odor down on it.
Odor, yes.
Is that the reference? I guess it is the reference.
And since 2009, just looking at the responsibility and the timeline, I mean, the land use enforcement officer, myself, is now the building inspector. So, things have been accomplished, and there are other mechanisms to say, like, a number 2, the challenges associated with surreptitious conversion of single-family homes. We don't see that. You might see somebody crammed in, an extra body, but there are no extra dwelling units being added.
So we would cross that one out. It's not happening.
Well, we had that one recently, though, where they didn't report the fact of somebody living in there.
Yes.
So I guess it could still happen.
But, well, I mean, that's despite the ordinance. You know what
Right,
I'm
the
saying?
ordinance already covers it.
Yeah.
The ordinance already gives you what you need, is what you're saying.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And
Okay.
the expansion of that job is also filled in some of those cracks.
Yes. Is number 3 okay the way it is?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And CCC is a good venue.
Yeah. How different is it from number 4? It would make sense for me to combine those.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than the adoption of off-campus housing policies.
Well,
But yeah, they are
the-
very similar, those
Well, the
3 and 4.
university has off-campus housing policies.
Do they?
I thought they said they did in terms of who can live off campus.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Okay, but that's pretty meager.
Yeah, but that's what they have. So,
I think if you move parking number of non-related tenants per unit up to number 3, that would cover both of those.
So something I have observed in early morning hours, or sometimes all the time in student housing areas, is just massive amounts of trash. And I don't know if there's any way that we can add some sort of language in here that encourages cleanup after large parties, or I'm not sure how far we can go with that, but
It's,
I think the best way to go is through Mr. Bolton's organization, because it's easier to get a selectman's ordinance than it is a change in the zoning
I
ordinance.
see, okay.
And actually, on the
But this wasn't
CCC, there
talking
were
about-
several different parties that were, instrumental in cleanup too.
This wasn't talking about zoning in number 5, I was talking about a disorderly conduct ordinance.
Has that been done? Because that's almost like, 8 years ago, it was saying to revise this. Has it been revised?
Yeah, actually, they toughened it up. I think just before Steve Temporino left PPD, they actually instituted almost a 3 strikes rule, where the fines ramped up from 3 to 6 to 1,000, not consecutive parties, but you get one, you hold that one, and 6 months later it comes up. And they've been a lot more aggressive in doing the noise violations.
So if we're going to keep that, it should be enforce,
Or maintain.
maintain.
Well, we didn't include the registering,
The landlords.
though we have all that informally, I'm sure Steve's got all the
You
phone
can drive by the
numbers.
building and get the phone number too.
Right, and that too. And when we go to that 50-person level, that's already covered under the public gathering permits. So, it's at the discretion of the police as to what is a disruptive gathering at this point. I think they've been pretty good in not saying any 3 people, grab them up. But I know that over Spring Fling, there were parties on Pleasant and Russell that were monitored. The police were there, standing, watching them, and everybody was good, and there were no arrests in those parties, so
Big though.
it was weird.
As far as trash all over your yard, don't we have ordinances? Like, nobody can do that, can they? Can't we, doesn't the town have ordinances?
We need something that's specific for that.
It would need to be a health hazard.
Yeah. And again, it's pretty broad. I mean, the original one came out of dumpsters. People found the dumpsters unsightly. So those were kind of reined in, and they have to be screened and covered and emptied on a regular basis. But, if I want to litter my front lawn with beer cans, don't try to stop me. But if it's not your property, and it's somebody who's out of town, maybe there would be an avenue for that. I think that, because I've been thinking a lot about that lately. I mean, it always occurs in move out, or after parties. And, at that point, there's, the landlords aren't interested in pursuing it because they can't get the kids to pay for it. And meanwhile, the dumpsters are overflowing, and everybody who sees a dumpster uses a dumpster. And, so we can do it in that, but I've been in conversation, for example, just the past couple of days with Waste Management. There's a property, they have an overflowing dumpster, they're $2,600 in arrears, and I said, get it out. Well, we have to send it to collections first. So everything's third-handed, you know what I mean? And it's really difficult to get right to the source, because if I talk to the landlord, they're going to say, well, I got Waste Management and I owe them a little money, but they're going to do it. Well, no, you get up and pick it up, but he lives in somewhere else, that's inconvenient and has a job.
Mm-hmm.
So, but, I've been, and maybe it's not the place to bring it up, but yeah, that has been concerning me. I think it would be not an easy task, but certainly nothing that approaches getting it on the zoning ordinance, to have the selectmen say, within move-out day, you're going to have your dumpster off the property if you don't have any tenants, and all things would be cleaned up and, under that. So it's still kind of percolating in my brain. But I would like to see something like that. I mean, that's my own personal feeling, but I'm not sure of the mechanism to get it done.
So I'm thinking something more general, like to regularly review town ordinances regarding this stuff. right, and enforce them, so I'll do some language on that. 7 probably is not possible. That's
I would
be
think, I would think. it would be.
violation of privacy.
Mhm.
And 8 we'll keep, because you said that's going all right, so we'll leave it in there, right?
Yes.
How about number 9?
You know, that seems like a good idea, to have realtors, when they're selling a house to somebody, to have a little bit of, because I know there, like, if there's
Yeah.
a.
Occupancy limits, they just might not know.
Yeah, and I remember when I was in Holderness, the Conservation Commission had a problem with if they had a, like a easement on property and then it was sold, and the realtors very often wouldn't tell the next people that there's, you know, and so we try to make it so like a requirement and work with the realtors, so that was, so I think it's this, you know, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. I'll just change the language a little, get rid of a better relationship. That kind of implies there's a problem there.
And again, speaking from personal, that was one of the very first things I started doing when I got here. And I've gotten, the first year, maybe 2 calls, and now I get several calls a week concerning what can I do on the property. So they're pretty well trained at this point. But if there was something a little bit harder than that, I'd welcome that too, because, you know, I'm not always going to be here.
Well, one thing that could be done would be to supply the realtors with a kind of a template that they could add to their disclosure form, the seller's disclosure, that, you know, that this property, I mean, normally you would disclose things like conservation easements, you're required to disclose those, but maybe provide them with a template that would help disclose some of these relative town ordinances and.
Yeah, they're not gonna add that to the disclosures. They're not gonna put anything in there they don't have to, but some of them would give out an additional, you know, flyer. You could get something on one page that describes the town ordinances. I don't think you can do number 10.
Yeah, that's a funny one. All the time, they can never leave campus.
Right.
What the incentive is, the shot collar or the?
Invisible fencing.
Oh, that's addition.
Oh, my gosh.
It kind of goes with 11. I
Yeah.
think we've addressed that. And here's this curb cuts and lawns thing again.
Yeah.
You just can't do all that much on there. Unless it's multifamily, and then you have it in site plan review. All you can look at is the driveway permit. And that's not about the lawns. I don't have to have a lawn.
Yeah, I think that was all in response to when people were parking you know, they'd have so many people, everyone had a
Yes.
car, and there's cars all over the lawn, and they were
Yeah.
the whole thing turned into a
Now,
driveway.
you could require that every residence have a parking space that enables turning around without backing into the street, but I'm not sure you want to do that in some of these neighborhoods. You can't just do it for students.
Right, and it's pretty tight in the downtown.
Yeah.
Which would mean more curb cuts, probably. I mean, very few people have a hammerhead or a semicircular drive.
My
More,
neighborhood, it would be
more,
impossible.
yeah, I don't think you
Where do
probably
you
want to
live,
do
Rebecca?
it.
Wentworth Street.
Oh, okay, yep, exactly.
Maybe if we had really small cars.
And from what we heard at a couple of meetings now, the university is trying to increase their on-campus housing. They are.
I mean, you know, 13 just seems
It should've-
backwards to me.
That should have been followed with like LOL.
Yeah. This was 2007 though, so that didn't exist back then. So-
right.
But I won't write that because I tend to just type my notes.
And the problem is that they only keep half of them on campus. So unless they could be encouraged to keep everybody on, I think that,
Well, it's also a tricky thing because they could put up a new dorm with, I mean, they are nice enough to come here, but they can also just do that.
yes.
So why don't we just turn this one around so it's, I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying you encourage the university to increase campus housing as student enrollment, to keep it in line with student enrollment.
Could a town say to a university, you can only be this big?
No.
You
Not
can't.
this, not this university. I mean, it's a.
Public.
Yeah, it's a public
Yeah.
university.
The private one, I suppose you could
Mhm.
through site plan review, say, no, we're not gonna approve this change for some reason,
Right.
but not a public one.
Well, should we put something about encouraging student housing in areas that are less developed? Like, I heard that there was talk, and I don't know if this is true or not, because it hasn't come before the planning board, but I heard there was talk of putting student dorms up on Tenny Mountain at one point.
Yeah, that's,
Then you're getting away from the whole walkability
Mhm.
goal, so.
yeah, that was Michael Bouchard's,
Yeah.
desire.
I think, I guess I just want to bring up the new dorm again because that changes the community and the character of the town in a different way, but there were comments about how it was negatively impacting a neighborhood too, so. So I think there's two sides to encouraging more on-campus housing.
So, not to belabor this point, but as a town, we couldn't tell the university,
No.
look, but the university basically can say, we're taking over the whole town. We don't want this town here anymore. We're going to expand our population till till we own
If there were
every bit of
enough
Plymouth.
private landowners around the university that would do that, you're absolutely
Right,
right.
they can't take it by eminent domain, somebody'd have to sell them.
And they.
But they can
buy
make
up
it
property.
so,
They do buy up property.
They Corleone them.
I mean,
I mean, Hanover is a good example, but Dartmouth College owns much of the downtown so that they can control the look and the land uses.
Mm.
Keep it looking a certain way for alumni donors.
That'd be nice.
I think Dartmouth might have a bigger alumni donor base.
Yeah,
That's really
Plymouth
true.
that won't even read anything anymore. Like,
Sustainability.
yeah.
but it's why downtown Hanover looks the way it does.
So is 13 encourage PSG to increase on-campus housing?
Consistent with adjacent neighborhoods.
Okay.
If you're gonna go into this much detail on some of these housing populations, say, the one we heard the most about was seniors. And I've got that in the land use section, so I might, I'm gonna pull some of that out.
That's good.
The whenever I read this kind of wording, relaxing certain development requirements, I'm wondering why you would have any that weren't necessary in the first place. That's my issue with relaxed requirements or, a streamlined system. Shouldn't everybody be getting
Requirements, boom.
in
It's
the most efficient process but density bonuses might be something to consider.
Well,
What's
isn't it
permanently
possible?
affordable? Well, no, what is permanently affordable?
It's defined in the workforce housing statute. I mean, all that's pretty detailed in there.
You serious?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they have, I think they have some of those in Lebanon, right by the hospital.
Yeah, that's a Twin Pines Housing Trust project, a tax credit project, Guile Hill.
Yeah, guy, yeah. I
Yeah,
know that.
I was on the Twin Pines board when that was planned. Tax credits are a common way to do it. And that's a mixed, just some of it's market rate, some of it's affordable. Do you want to put number 2 in the economic development section?
Makes more sense.
No, it's not a bad
Yep.
recommendation. I just had the same conversation in another community about they want to get business and redevelopment. I said, have you ever, if somebody was looking to locate a business, do you have an inventory of the available buildings? And they said, gosh, no. Not a bad thing. Covered the density bonus. This creative site design kind of, there's a lot of thoughts in this number 3. That the first phrase, I was trying to get at cluster, really. I'm not sure we talked about that in land use. I don't remember. Do you allow cluster development in the agricultural
Yes,
district?
subdivision. We have one on the books. With 2 houses on it. 3 if you count the original farmhouse.
So something along the lines of number 3 makes sense to keep that. I'll look at that.
And
It kind of is a vision statement, it's good.
So wordsmith, premature wordsmith here. Especially when we're talking about land, it says preservation. I think conservation is a much more appropriate use of, or word choice there, if we're continuing that. And I just think that preservation versus conservation are different things. And, sorry.
Yep.
I feel like we should differentiate between affordable housing and low-income housing. I think those two terms can be kind of.
I think, and they're that way in the law too. The workforce housing law talks about moderate and it talks about low. It really doesn't cover both. I don't think it's affordable for whoever it is. You're not differentiating in the workforce and affordable really. It's the idea that nobody should pay more than 30% of their household income on housing is how affordability is defined. Whether that's 30% of $100 a week or $1,000 a week.
So we're using affordable not as an official term, but as a generic term.
So I will turn this around, get it, these changes, maybe some questions and highlights in it still, like by the end of next week. And your job would be to, you know, really sit down and read it, think about it, and see, did we put in something by mistake that conflicts with something else? Is something missing that you've thought of? Take a close look at the responsibility column. What other players can you add? And the timeline, kind of make sure that not everything landed in the short term or everything landed in the ongoing, because we didn't want to think about whether it was short, medium, or long. So it'll be kind of the, not the last look, but you want to, maybe the last meeting, the next meeting ought to be the last one that's entirely about that section.
So in the next meeting, you'll give us a new document?
No, I'm gonna send it to Brian
I'll email it to
Okay.
y'all.
in a week or so.
Okay. So it's not this, so you're gonna give us something?
Yeah, don't
Yeah.
do that with this yet. So I'll take those, because you're gonna get an updated one to
Okay.
distribute. Don't take the natural resource plans away.
Thanks for doing this. The Conservation Commission has talked about, actually, they ignore that this thing exists. They refer to it once in a while, and it's upstairs in the library, but it's hard to access.
Yeah, well, the recommendation was in here to do one, was how it came up, that you had one that I'd
Yeah,
never seen,
Yeah,
so
and it's incredibly useful.
it's kind of been happening the whole process of doing the plan, is we've talked about something and someone will say, well, I had one of those, and
Yeah.
I've been in dribbles.
It was never distributed, and I think this should, when you get on the Conservation Commission, you should get a copy of this.
Yeah,
And a copy of the master plan.
and
And yes, and we should refer to that master plan constantly. We've never talked about it, and since I've been on the Conservation Commission. And I never realized how useful it was.
so I changed where it said to do an NRI, I said utilize and build upon the 2005 natural resources inventory. So it's, you know, Pointing specific. So some new person on the Conservation Commission can say, well, isn't there a 2005 natural resource inventory? How do I get a copy of that? Next meeting date, you guys meet in 4th of July week?
Yeah, July 6th.
I'm not positive I'm gonna be around, but I can let you know shortly. I'll get rid of these.
Yeah, July 6th.
Yeah, July 6th.
He's being funny.
Do you want to meet that week?
It just means we're kicking it down till August.
Well, no, we won't do that. I was just, if I'm not around, I'm wondering what your other meeting is in July.
20th, that's,
Yeah, I can't make the
That's it.
20th, I have another meeting. So hopefully I'll be around.
Well, there's nothing that says that we couldn't set up another one for this. You know, if the one is too late and the other can't be done, I mean, you know, there's 2 other Thursdays in July that we could utilize.
Yeah, so I'll coordinate with you, but, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, see that.
I don't go anywhere, so it's.
I'll see you here, Rebecca.
Or you could come in 2 weeks for our very exciting public hearing on the new subdivision, if you want to be entertained.
Most of my evenings are already full of entertainment in other communities.
You can always watch the video, Trace.
Oh, right, that's right. In case you missed it.
Same subdivision? Is this the same one, or is there something
Yeah,
new?
the
All the same one.
Okay.
It was
Oh, I
continued.
got excited for something new and exciting. This is a little exciting.
All right.
Thanks, Tara.
Thank you, Charlie.
Bye.
See ya.
It's nice meeting you.
Yeah, nice to put a face with a name.
Okay, so next item, actually, before that, Brian, have you heard anything from the parties?
None. I'm
Nothing.
absolute silence. There was the other weird one, the other subdivision that was going to be coming eventually before you after it went to ZBA, they had pulled it. It was the White subdivision up by the McLeod property. It was even more wet than this one. And they were trying to do, big housing out in a very small area, and, 3/4 of it is too wet to build or, too steep. So they voluntarily pulled it out. I don't know what they're going to do with it. But as far as the other ones, no, I haven't heard a thing from anybody.
I would ask the board members to think about what they want to do if these guys just show up and haven't done anything to address our concerns, which there's an excellent chance that that's what they're going to do.
There were the three scenarios. I mean, it's pretty easy multiple choice.
Right, but I think it's an excellent chance is that they're going to say
Yeah.
none of the above, and we're going to get a legal lecture from both parties to the extent of an hour or two, and then we'll have to decide what we want to do. So anyway, think about that.
Just a question before we jump into that. What is the requirement? I mean, if the public hearing is not open, because they're applicants or they're representing applicants, they can speak? Or, I feel like sometimes we're getting sort of run over by legalese a little bit.
Yeah, I think the last meeting was atypical, in that, there was, that memorandum was submitted after the public hearing had been closed,
Yeah.
and then Jack objected to that.
And now there's going to be a rebuttal to that
Yeah,
at this next meeting.
right. So I think that I don't know if it's everybody against us or if, how it's working out. But, it would seem to me that the best and highest use of the land is to stay to the high ground there, even if it means moving pins. It's a subdivision, that's what it's all about anyway. And it seemed like their main objection to that was that the mandated split would be altered. But as you and I discussed, you can move your lines around, so, Archimedes' law is still observed.
It's a minimal loss, even if you didn't move anything around. And
Right.
just move the two pins.
Yeah, but I
It's a
mean,
minimal,
I think they were, that was signed and sealed from the court, so they have to stick with those acreages after 10 years of wrangling over it.
They file an amendment with the court, or
Yeah,
Yeah.
what the hell?
but simple enough just to do, one of the two. I mean, it ends it right there. Either an easement or move the boundary, but I think we were pretty clear in saying we do not like traversing these wetlands. And this is
And
the
isn't
best
it
way
a
to
matter
go.
of they can't, right? The state won't let them?
They
No,
will
they-
if there's no other option, and
we give them
basically
the
we're making it so that there's no other option.
Right. If we give them the subdivision, then they'll tell the state to let them across that wetland.
Right. But, having this behind you and the previous master plan, the preservation of natural resources, and you have a clear alternative or the least damaging one, I think it's your duty to stick to your guns in something like that, but.
I mean, there's really no harm to the parties except their ego, frankly.
Exactly.
Anyway, Brian, you want to talk about
Yeah, we got to come up with a conditional use permit
Irv?
for our ADUs. I sent everybody email, one that's, did you guys get this, or
I
did
didn't
I
get
not?
that.
Okay. Steve Whitman found this, and he sent it to me. I'll make sure you all have copies before you go. But basically, it's, I'll pass it around, and you look at it, very similar to just the ideas that I threw out. This was just a bin for me to drop ideas in when they came to me, and, I was gonna get together with Sharon on it and bring it to you guys, but, so here I am with this.
So one thing that when we were talking about this checklist in a previous meeting, we were talking about the need for parking, otherwise it kicks it to a multi-unit. So I think the go, no-go things that were on your list should also be on your permit, right?
Yes.
So that was, the parking stipulation.
Well, I mean, it could be a two-pager that, these are the, this is what's set in stone, and this is how you address it.
Right.
Give them the what-fors on the one side. But we're pretty much, I mean, that way they know coming in, and hopefully they're educated enough before they seek the special use permit as to just what it is that they're looking at. I always talk to people at the counter, it'll be available online. But it certainly wouldn't harm to have an extra page of, these are the do's and don'ts of this, and how you answer it on the other side.
So it seems like the one that from Dover, the first 2 pages are just boilerplate, basically,
Yeah.
right?
But we're not noticing the butters in this because it's a permitted use.
Right, that's on the third page.
Yeah.
Right, so, you're gonna have to have kind of that on your form anyway.
Yes.
Something similar to that.
Right,
With the items that are specific to the ADU.
yes.
So I guess Steve's point was just, I don't know.
Well, if we ever need to issue them for any other act, that's the perfect thing to do. But, the two things work in one. This is a very specific, and the only one we have at this point in time.
So will you think it's worth outlining what's permitted and what's not?
Yeah, just a quick,
But on the permit or on a separate document?
well, it'd just be a cover sheet to that. So you get the
Summarizing the law.
package, I'm interested in putting this, you need to read this. And it tells you, what you may not do. And then essentially the next page is their answer as an affidavit to the planning board that this is what I'm committed to doing. So, that way there's no, you look at the parking, if there's any kind of a parking issue and, say, well, you need to adjust it here.
So you don't, but you're not saying that this is gonna come before the planning board every one of these?
Isn't it?
I don't think so.
Okay. I mean,
And it's-
I see, that might have been a misunderstanding on my part, that,
I can't remember what we said.
The ordinance
yes.
specifies what's required.
And if it says.
We can't say no as
that's-
long as the requirements are met.
Yes.
It's not a site plan review.
Right. It's a special use permit.
It's like a
Now,
building
whether
permit.
that's just submitted to you or if they plead their case at the meeting, I think that's a matter of administration. If it doesn't say specifically in the ordinance how it's going to be addressed.
Yeah, so there's no butter notification, there's no need for the planning board to be involved.
Right, other than there's a notification and probably, say a couple come in interim, I'll give them to you and you can read them off, publicly. But, so yeah, and this is what I didn't understand about the conditional use permit to begin with, is whether it was something that was acted on or something that was granted if you meet the parameters.
I think this is the latter.
Okay. So it's essentially another form of building permit.
Permit by notification.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Basically.
Okay. And certainly I would keep you guys in the loop on this if you would like, just to kind of track how it's going. We're all kind of interested to see how it will be, but
I'd just be curious to see where, I can't imagine they're gonna be banging down the door to put these in right away, but, how many are going in, where they're going in, are they separate units and,
People don't know about it.
yeah, well, that's the thing. We kind of got it out as much as we could, and maybe they're just ruminating, and certainly, it's very attractive to an aging population. You can stay in the house and, it's an open in-law apartment.
You trying to keep me in Plymouth, Brian?
Yes, I am. Our aging population, you, me, and Bill, we got to stay. Chris, I'm not sure about
And
it.
Brian say to you,
That's right.
Oh,
I could put up 2 people.
You could just, yeah, stay in my garage.
I can stay in your garage?
There you go.
3,500 a semester?
Yes.
You got it.
So is there anything on my list that you don't like or you would like to add to?
Well, the parking.
Okay, well, I do have a lot plan showing addition and parking area with distance to boundaries shown.
Okay.
So that would be on the actual application, whereas the
So this is the
bullet points
checklist.
would be on, yes, this is the checklist that I'm talking about. The bullet points will be cribbed directly from the ordinance.
Okay. In that case, I don't have any comments, really. You guys want to look at this?
What kind of structure does there need to be structure in place for regular checking to make sure that it's owner occupied? I mean,
That's where the affidavit comes in.
Yeah.
So if you do it and, you know, and there will also be something to the effect of it's not as easily transferable as you might think it is, because that also appears in the ordinance, that, you know, any change of ownership, you know, a new one has to come out. And, you know, any change in living conditions, if you leave town, that use has to be extinguished. And then they would sign on the bottom, just like the inventory forms that we used to send out, which can be used against you because you were testifying, essentially. You're saying that everything I put down here is true. So there's civil and or criminal consequences to not doing that.
So, part of this, permit is going to be their signature that they've received the ordinance.
Yeah,
So
you
they
know,
say,
I've
"Oh, I
read and
didn't know-"
understood the specific parameters dealing with.
Right, so they can't say, oh, I didn't know I couldn't sell my house, or I didn't know I couldn't move to Florida for the winter, I got my mail forwarded, someone, I can see all kinds of problems, but,
Well, not only did they get the cover sheet, but I'm sure if it's a one-pager, I'll have the same thing on the back and just give it to them. So they'll get a copy, I'll have a copy, and, you know, it'll have everything, you know, this is what you need to subscribe to if you're buying into this on the back as well.
Okay, good.
That way you hit them twice. I mean, one is, you know, just for walk-in business, people are exploring.
Right,
And then it gets really dire at the end, you know. It's not as easy as people think it is because they're actually, you know, putting themselves on the line for this. It's not a slap on the wrist, you know, and potentially they could, you know, have it boarded up.
so if someone sells their house, the new owner has to reapply for the ADU? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes. Because they need that affidavit of occupancy.
So they have to submit all the plans all over again?
Oh, no, it would be just probably an updated cover sheet.
So you need some form that allows for that?
Yeah, it would be, well, essentially, it would be, you know, a copy of the original with their signature and, you know, I don't know, bill of sale or something like that. But,
So I hereby agree to abide by this document dated blah, 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 signed originally by blah, 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 blah.
yeah,
Okay.
or just have them fill out the brand new one. We already have accepted the plans, check, 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 because somebody's gonna be looking at that. And, you know, nothing has changed, except for the name on the mailbox. So,
Out of curiosity, are all the town's records online, or are they in boxes, or how do you deal with building permits and all that stuff?
okay, they're all by property inventory number, that 6-digit number.
Yeah.
And then they're color-coded as to, there's site plan review, zoning infractions, zoning board work, septic design, everything that you guys do, there's a folder for that. Site plan review and subdivision. There's a note in there reflecting the parent lot of the subdivided property. And then everything is filed, you know, according to those. So every building permit that has been issued for your property should be in that folder.
And that folder, hard copy or online, or?
It's all hard copy, none of it is digitized.
None of it's digitized, okay.
We're required to keep paper at this point, forever.
Is it a fireproof archive?
I'm not telling you. Pretty suspicious question, Mr. Chair.
I'm just, these are just idle questions. All right, I'm done with my idle
Well,
questions.
it's a sprinkled building, how's that?
Oh, okay. Wet building permits. Any,
But that's also public record, so it has to be accessible to all of us.
okay, so anything more on your side?
No, so I'll go ahead and write this up, I'll email it all to you, I'll accept any changes, you know. And we'll just, hopefully by the next meeting, I'll have one for you to look at as, you know, the final product.
Awesome. Any other new business, folks? Any comments from the public? Frank? Frank's not here. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. So moved.
And seconded by Mr.
I'll second.
We're done. No
You lost
objections,
it
we're done.
first, so.